University of Calgary are sounding the alarm about the mental health of children and teenagers. They say depression and anxiety symptoms have doubled in children and adolescents compared to before the pandemic. 1 in 4 youth are showing signs of depression, while 1 in 5 have anxiety, with girls and older teens more effective. Sherry Madigan joins me now. She's a clinical psychologist and associate professor with the University of Calgary and senior researcher of the project. Sherry, thank you for giving us your time today.
Thanks for having me.
Looking at the findings here, are you surprised? We know that we've talked about mental health among youth, anxiety and depression. Add the pandemic in, and it was almost clear that kids were going to be greatly affected.
Yeah, I wasn't necessarily surprised because there's a lot of research to show that, mental distress is up everywhere. And so when we looked at it in particular for kids, we were actually expecting rates to be higher compared to what we saw before the pandemic. But the thing that I was surprised about is that we actually saw that those increases really persisted and actually got worse over the course of the pandemic. Initially, people thought that youth would rebound and adjust and adapt to the pandemic, but it actually shows that there's been a cumulative toll on them, and their mental health is not getting better at this point.
Yeah, and we know, again, when we look at the demographics, girls being more affected than boys.
Yeah, so that's something that we see across the literature in a pandemic or not in a pandemic. We tend to see that girls do suffer for some more anxiety and depression.
What are the now looking at sort of the long-term effects, because we're still in this, and then what we can do? I mean, parents are listening very carefully, saying, what can I do to help my kids?
Yeah, it's so important, and I think there are some long-term impacts. So if this persists for many youth and there's no services for them, there is a good chance that they're going to see some problems in terms of how they feel, how they function, how they do at school, how they sleep, how they eat. There is a cumulative effect on other parts of their lives. So I think that we're going to see that if this is left unaddressed, it's going to actually create some problems for youth, and they're the future of our society. So we really want to invest in them. And I think that we need to really allocate some resources so that they can get, feel like they have better psychological well-being.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. And parents that are listening right now, worried, and it could be little things like my child doesn't sleep at night or needs to co-sleep with a parent because they're feeling nervous for whatever reason. What would you say to parents right now in terms of what they can do?
Yeah, and I really empathize with those parents. It's been really hard in the pandemic to be a parent for sure, and then have our own stressors on top of that. And I think that some really direct things that parents could do is, as much as possible, get back to those routines. So one of the things that being in school allowed children, being in person in school, was routines. So their academics were on time, but then that actually creates a trickle effect where they eat at the same time every day. They typically sleep at the same time every day. And that routine and predictability can actually be really, really healthy for kids' well-being. So as much as possible, try to have sleep, eating, screen time, physical activity routines that are actually pretty consistent from day to day, because then kids will see, they'll be able to predict their environment a little bit more, and that can actually be really helpful. And I would say that if you find your child is particularly struggling, they're not alone. There are many children struggling, as this study shows, but there's been an influx in terms of admissions in pediatric hospitals around the country. Go see your family physician and try to get some resources for how you might be able to get treatment for your child, or how you might implement some coping strategies to really get them on the right track to feeling better in terms of their mental health.
Really critical information here. We've got to take care of our little ones. Sherry Madigan, clinical psychologist and associate professor with the University of Calgary. Sherry, thank you so much for this.
Thank you.